Hi, we are doing a three-part series on how to save your relationship. You are probably here because you're at that breaking point. You're not sure if you and your husband are going to make it past a week, or let alone if you can make it past a day or the next 5 minutes, right? Or maybe you're at a point where you and your wife just got into this huge fight and it was like over the smallest thing. It was a simple getting directions and try as you're driving, you're asking her to navigate or look up something, and then it blew up into this huge fight where when you left the house, there were two of you in the car, and now there's only one of you in the car, and whoever's in the car is ready to go home without the other person, and you don't care if they walk home alone in the rain on the side of the freeway, but there's a part of you that thinks, maybe I love them, I should turn around. Or maybe you're just thinking, if something happened to her or him, it's gonna make me look really bad. So you decide to come back, and here you are now, right, soaking wet. Well, I'm glad you're watching this video because it means you haven't given up on your husband. You haven't given up on your wife. There's a part of you that still has hope. And so with this video, I want to strengthen that hope. I want to help you grow that hope and see that your relationship can be better than you can ever dream of. My name is David Huynh. I'm a relationship coach at Resonance Relationship Counseling and Coaching. Now, just in case you're wondering, who is this guy? Right? Maybe you were searching for David Huynh, the actor, and I just came up, or maybe I showed up on your search results for some reason. It means that all the money I'm putting towards SEO or whatever is working, right? But regardless, just in case you're wondering, who am I? Well, I've been a pastor for the last about 15 years. And before that, I was working at a nonprofit. And throughout those years, I was always working with obviously individuals, but also couples, helping them, counseling them, supporting them, encouraging them to find ways to make their relationship work through better communication, but also helping each person in the relationship to understand the narrative of what each person is coming from, to see how to work with each other and to have a better relationship. And so I think if I was over the top, I would say I've seen 1,000 couples, over 1,000 couples, and not one of them is divorced, and all of them have gotten taller, and all their incomes have gotten much bigger. Well, I know I can't say that, but I've worked with a lot and plenty, and learned a lot, and a lot of these principles that if you go talk to me, if you go see me, or if you continue to watch these videos or read the blogs, you'll see a lot of these things have worked for a lot of the couples that I've worked with and have worked with. And these are things that it has worked for my wife and I. My wife and I have been married for 15 years. She's my only wife, just to let you know. It's like one thing to be like, yes, these things will work after the fifth wife, if we finally figured it out. But no, my wife and I have been married for 15 years. She's also a marriage family therapist, and so I think we want to make it work because I think it gives us some credibility. We have two kids. One's a 12-year-old and a 5-year-old, and so that's who I am. Just in case you're wondering, who is this guy? So today we are going to talk about how to stop fighting over the little things. And that's an important topic because that's part of saving your relationship. That's one of the most important things that I find that couples will go talk to me about. They're just like, it's just a small thing. I don't want to fight over a small thing. And I tell her it's just a little thing, but she blows it up, and then I get all blown up, and then she says it's my fault, and that I'm exploding. And I tell her over and over, why do you get frustrated, or why do you get on me about the smallest things? It's not the end of the world. Now, why are we talking about this? Well, maybe for some of you, you've gotten to a place where you just don't feel emotionally safe with the person that you're with. Maybe people who see your girlfriend or see your wife, they think, oh, she's the most sweetest little thing. But you're thinking, like, you don't know what she's like, all right? You don't know how she can easily, turn to a big, crazy monster, right? No one knows, right? And so you're just like, when people go, oh, she's so sweet, your wife's so gentle, right? Yeah, gentle killer, right? Or maybe you're like, everyone looks up to my husband, and he's so charming. Everyone gets along with my husband, but no one knows how angry he gets, how monstrous he gets, and how scared I get, even though he's not like hitting me or doing anything abusive, but his screaming and his shouting and breaking plates, it's scary. And so I find that a lot of couples feel like they're walking when they get home, like they would have a really good day, and when they would get home, they would describe it to me like as if someone is walking through a field of landmines, hidden landmines, And so they walk gingerly because they don't know if they're going to step on something, and when they step on something, if they're going to explode. You ever see those movies? You ever watch those movies where there's like landmines and they're walking, all of a sudden they step on something, you hear like click, and then they stop, and they're just like, oh no, and they look over to their friends or their comrades or whatever, and they all look like, oh no, right? And so maybe when you step on an emotional landmine at home, you don't have like your troops with you who are looking at you like, oh no. You have maybe like, I don't know, your dog who's looking at like, oh no, right? Or your cat who's like, you stepped on that one, right? And then your husband or maybe your wife, you step on that emotional landmine. You said something or you did something, and then there's this big explosion, or your boyfriend or your girlfriend just blows up on you, and you didn't even know, you were having a great day, you just happened to be walking home, and you didn't realize you stepped on that landmine. And so maybe, a lot of you are in that place where you just don't feel emotionally safe. And maybe some of you feel like, what's wrong with me? It's not like he's a bad person, or maybe some of you are like, it's not like, she's cheating on me or doing anything really horrible, but there's a part of you that's like, but I just don't feel emotionally safe. And I think you should feel emotionally safe. I think you deserve to be in a place, to be in a marriage, to be in a relationship where you can put your guard down, where you can just look at the person that you love, that you want to build your life with, or that you are building your life with ease, with a certain lightness, with a certain joy, with a certain sense of being on the same page and being teammates and not enemies. So we're going to look at 3 ways to stop fighting over the smallest thing. Number 1, being trustworthy over the little things. Now you might be thinking like, that's it? Like that's it? Like what? Now here's why. The reason why your spouse or your significant other explodes over the little things or nags you over the little things is because they don't trust you over the little things. And that builds up over time. And the more it builds up, the more explosive it gets. And the more they assume and expect that you're not trustworthy, and then just reinforce a negative feeling they have about you, And more importantly, it reinforces a false belief that you're not going to change. And so they feel frustrated. They feel trapped. And so the first thing that you need to do is to be trusting over the little things. Now, what you may be wondering too is like, wait a minute, like, isn't this something that they're supposed to do to change? Well, chances are the reason why you're like, I don't know why she always gets mad at me or he gets mad at me. Chances are, and there's a lot of different reasons, but chances are, and yeah, I would say if you even take the initiative, right, to show that you're taking their needs, or even the little things, the things that they care about seriously, you're gonna develop trust. And the more they can trust you over the little things, it adds up. Then they can trust you over the big things. But let's say it's your spouse who's not very, you're the one that's mad at them because they never follow through, right? They never do what they say they're going to do. That's something you can talk about. And in just a little bit, we'll talk more about that. But what does it mean to be trustworthy over the little things? Very, very simple. Follow through. If you say you're going to do something, do it, right? And I would say if your spouse or your significant other is really mad at you for whatever reason, they're getting mad at you over little things, drop everything and whatever you say you're going to do it right away, even if it interferes with your life. Because if your spouse, your significant other sees you taking the little things that they care about seriously, like being on time, like taking out the trash, like doing the dishes when you say you're going to do the dishes, the more they see you putting the effort and sort of being in like emergency mode and dropping everything, the more they see you doing that, the more they will trust you. And it's amazing. It's amazing what happens. The more they trust you, the more you'll see that there will be less anger over the little things. Isn't it worth it to do that for your spouse or your significant other? And think of what you get in return. A spouse who it would take, you're gonna have to chip away at their anger, okay? Don't assume you're gonna be like, hey, I did the dishes, she's still mad at me. Of course, for some of you, you've been married for like 5 years. Think about every day for those past 5 years. She saw that you never follow through. So it's gonna take a little bit. It may not take a full 5 years to help her get over that, to stop being mad at you or for him to start trusting you again. But the more you work at it, the more you're going to chip away. Think of it like a savings account or a checking account. The more you show them that you are trustworthy over the little things, the more and more they're going to see their account get bigger. And the more trust they'll have. So it's like a trust account. And they'll see their trust will grow and grow. And then the more it grows, the interest will triple it and multiply it, to the point where they're very trusting and you won't be fighting over the littlest thing. Now here's the second thing about being trustworthy over the little things. Let's say it's your spouse. Let's say you're the one that you are getting tired of being the one that nags, right? You're tired. Well, I would say do this. Have a conversation with them. And this is where I think having a third party would be really helpful, because maybe in the past you try to talk to them about it and then it just explodes. But you have to understand the reason why they may be resistant is because there's a huge narrative in their life. There's a certain ritual that they are in. And so anytime someone brings up something they're not doing right, it reminds them. It brings out certain unhealed wounds, and then the ritual starts happening again. And that ritual for a lot of people that I find is growing up, they were always criticized by the parents, and they always had a feeling like they can never be good enough. And so they get angry, they withdraw, and so it's like a ritual. It's like they do something, and then they're told that's not good enough. Then they get angry, they feel rejected, and then they withdraw. See the ritual? And so what happens in marriage or relationships is suddenly, they're happy with you, but then they start reacting to you like the way they react to their parents. And that's because it's a ritual and that's all they know. So you have to kind of come from that perspective and say, I'm not criticizing you, but it would just mean a lot to me if we, when you say you're going to do something, if you could just do it, or problem solve. Like, hey, when you tell me you're going to pick up something, I hope you know that I really need the kitchen sink, right? And sometimes it really, if I can't really make food if the sink is full of dishes, because I'm kind of waiting on you to do it. And so if you can approach it that way, you're being sensitive to their narrative, but you're also coming to them as a joint issue that the two of you are trying to resolve. Not something that they gotta keep changing, they're never gonna change. Like, if you're gonna go up to your boyfriend or girlfriend, or someone's gonna come up to you and be like, you're never gonna change, you always do this, what are you gonna say? Like, oh yeah, I do always do that. Thank you. You reminded me something that I didn't know, that I do this all the time. And yes, you're right. I'll never change. Yay! Right? Of course, that's not gonna happen, right? Unless it's a very sarcastic fight, which I do all the time. My wife gets mad at me and she goes, I'm like, all right, and then that makes her even more angry, and then that's how I win the fight. I offer nothing rational to respond to our fights, and so I just get sarcastic, and that's how I win our fights. But that's another video that we can make, right? Like how to win fights psychologically, right? But then that's manipulative. Anyways, so if you want to start chipping away and seeing a difference in your relationship, where you're not fighting over the littlest things, where you're not seeing your spouse blow up over the littlest things, start with being trustworthy yourself. And if you're that person that is, and your spouse or your partner or your significant other isn't, then approach him, talk to them, or even get a third party like myself. Find a couples coach like me, or someone else, but really your relationship is worth it. You can be happy again. You can be in love again. You can feel safe again. Or if you never felt that way, it's such a great feeling to have. It's a great emotional place to have when you can have that kind of relationship. It can happen. And so the first thing is being trustworthy over the little things. Number 2, address the third party, right? Address the third party that's in your relationship. Now, we're not talking about the mistress. We're not talking about the emotional affair. We're talking about the third person in your relationship, which is stress, right? Stress. Especially if you live in the Bay Area. Well, stress. And so a lot of times, we say and do things and we have certain reactions to each other, but it's not actually you, or it's not actually your significant other that you're getting angry at. It's you feeling powerless, you feeling tired, you feeling overwhelmed, you feeling like you are carrying the weight of the world on your shoulders. Let's think of it like this, on how stress can be a reason why you and your spouse or your significant other are fighting over the smallest things. Think of it this way. Stress can, it's like this. So this is a bag of chocolate. I don't know about you, but I, whenever my oldest or my wife, gets these to make to bake something, by the time they get to the bag, it's like I eat half of it. I love these things. And this is an example I saw from my good friend Eugene Chu over at Chinese Church in Christ in North Valley, come up with in one of his sermons. But, it's kind of like this. Although I think he used Skittles. I think it's something that tasted better. But anyways, so I'm a dark chocolate guy. I don't know anyone. Any? Not the crazy, like, was it 90, 90 whatever number. That's a little too bitter. I'm not that bitter. I'm bitter. I'm a bitter guy, but not that bitter. Anyways, so it's like this. So every day, we wake up and we have in us like a tank, a tank, and it's a tank of like of energy to be nice, energy to respond with patience, energy to be graceful with people. And so here's what happens, and this is what stress does. So you go to work, you start in the morning, and if you have kids, then it's like getting them out of the house, then that takes some of that out, right? And then so you lost a little bit of chocolate in your tank, your bag of let's call this the bag of grace, or the bag of kindness, the bag of being nice, right? Or your bag of energy. So it took a little bit, but that's okay. You still have some left. Go to work, and you got to do your weekly staff meetings, and the weekly staff meetings to you are pointless. It's like people are making they're just self-promoting. They're talking about you, or sometimes you got to defend your projects when it wasn't even your fault. It's because someone kept taking a vacation, and so there you go. It's like, come on, unlimited vacation doesn't mean unlimited vacation. Come on, right? And so there, you lost some. Now you lost some of that energy, and so your tank of, what do we call this? Like the bag of grace or the bag of kindness is a little bit less, right? And then you got to deal with emails, and the emails, oh my goodness, it just drags you, right? And then your mom calls, right? In the middle of the day when you're working, she calls you and tells you she doesn't know how to use something, and you told her like 1,000 times how to use that one thing, so you got less, right? Then you are driving home and you didn't charge your Tesla, right? And then now you got pulled over, so then you just lost some more, right? And then you go to Costco, and then they ran out of toilet paper, And so by the time you get home, you see your kids, and then they didn't do their homework. So this is all that you have left. And so by the time you see your husband or your wife, or by the time you talk to your boyfriend or girlfriend, you're empty. And not only are you empty, but you're tired, you're worn out, you're just wanting someone to give you some kindness, because all day long you've been giving out your patience, and now you are short. So that's why and then by the time you get home and talk to whoever, your significant other, you got nothing left. And all you have left is anger. All you have left is just, you're just fed up with life. And the person that gets the fed upness of life is your husband or your wife. So what can you do if that's you? Well, number one, there will be times, okay? There will be times when certain days will take all of whatever energy that you have. There will be those days, right? So what you should do, because, the one person who deserves some kindness, because they want to give you kindness, they want to give you grace, is your significant other. So what you can do is, maybe you could tell your husband or your wife, or your boyfriend, girlfriend, like, hey, I just had a really stressful day. Let me just get away, or hey, I just had a really stressful day. Can we do something that would just get me to get some of my energy back, right? Because I want to give you my best attention. And if we live in the perfect world, you and I wouldn't have to work, and we would just gaze into each other's eyes all day long, right? Kind of a thing. Again, if I had better effects, you see a unicorn flying by, or birds tripping by, and a song break out, right? But if you want to help me with that, let me know, okay? And so, so what you can do is, or maybe you need to be a little bit more existential. Is this the kind of job that's worth doing if every day you come home empty. Every day every day all you have left is negative, right? And maybe that's a question you need to ask. Now, I'm not saying you should quit, but maybe you need to ask some very important questions and to help figure out what you need to do, because the lifestyle you have is not helping you and is not helping the people around you. So if that's you, then put some boundaries around certain things. Now, the second thing about that with stress is, let's say you're the one that's coming home and you're actually in a good place, and you notice that your spouse or your significant other is not doing so good, right? They got that look, like, that like the quivering of the lips, like, and they're just like, so maybe your focus for that, maybe an hour with your significant other is asking or doing the things that would replenish them, right? They love boba, right? So get them that. I don't know. My wife is really into the milk one. It's just like milk, $5 thing of milk and boba, right? So get him that, right? Or your husband, like, I don't know if your husband's like me, but I love guacamole. So make him that guacamole, just the littlest things. Or check in, say, hey, how's your day? What's going on with your day? Oh, wow, what's so stressful about your day? Now, this is probably for another video, but don't be like, oh, you're just stressing out over little things. Then that's going to make them lose. Then you're going to see them just throw their chocolate at you, right? So don't be accusing, and don't problem solve their stress. Or you can ask them, like, oh, wow, that sounds really tough. Like, anything I can do to help you with that project or, that situation. Or you can exaggerate. If you're a guy, I think, not all the time, but, be like, did your boss do that again? Like, let me go over his house and go beat him up, right? Because I will, right? But you won't, and she knows you won't. And they go, ha, 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 ha. But, the gesture means a lot. So, so think of ways you can help them with their stress. So that way, when you appreciate it, when you come home and the person sees that you are a little stressed, now you might be busy too. You might have your own stress. So don't get me wrong, but at least if you are at capacity, figure out ways that you can help ease that stress, help ease that burden, help ease the mental load that they carry. And this goes back to even being able to being trustworthy over the littlest things. That can help restore some more energy into their little baggie, or what do they call it, goodie bag of grace and kindness. Number three, stop assuming and start planning. I think a lot of times couples that I work with, they get in these huge fights because a lot of times there's a lot of assumptions and things aren't really communicated. And so what happens is, someone assume their spouse would know to do the dishes because they cooked, right? Or maybe they thought their girlfriend would know that they needed to be picked up at a certain time. They assumed they knew, but instead, the problem with assumptions is it's in your head, and you're assuming whatever information is in your head is in the head of the other person. Both guys and girls do this all the time, right? And there's a lot of reasons why we do this. I think some of it is pretty vulnerable, right? To be like, hey, I made dinner. Do you think you can, do the dishes, right? And but instead, what comes out is, normal people who, normal couples share the load. So normal couples do it where one person cooks and the other is, cleans up, right? And the problem with kind of approaching that issue is you're basically saying your boyfriend or girlfriend or your husband and wife are not normal. There's something wrong with them. Now, think about that. Would that really motivate you? Someone came up to you, a normal person wouldn't do this. Oh, yeah, thank you. I didn't know I was not normal, right? Or maybe you're like, I don't want to be normal, right? And, you ever get in those fights. And so just being on the same page, and being on the same page means you plan together and you communicate the details. Now, don't get me wrong. Doesn't mean that every single time you have to like plan out the details. But I would say start with the important things, or start with things that kind of keep coming up in your relationship. I mean, think about it this way: in your company, wherever you work, before a big project is launched, right, or a big project is even done, usually you have a meeting. Usually the details are laid out and the roles are clear. Timeline is clear. Hopefully your company does that. Now some companies they just throw it at you and assume that you don't have a life, you don't have a family, you don't have 3 dogs that you gotta feed, and you can go get it all done within 12 hours, right? And there are companies that do that. Don't get me wrong. But you and your spouse, you and your significant other, you are wanting to make this work. You want to enjoy life together. You want to do life. You just want to enjoy life, make life together. And so to do that, you got to be on the same page. And to do that, you got to talk about the details. You got to plan ahead. So let's say there's an important wedding that you need to be at. And let's say you assume your wife knows that you want to be on time at the wedding. So instead of assuming it, why don't you talk it out like a day or 2 days before? Go, hey, are you okay if we're like super on time for this wedding? So can we be in the car? The wedding's at 1 o'clock. So can we be in? It takes about 30 minutes to get there. So can we be in the car by 12:25 sharp? All right. Now give some leeway, right? Like it's like a minute or two. Don't be like, right? And say, hey, if you're okay, because I'm gonna forget too. Can I set up Alexa to remind us? Get ready for blah blah blah, right? And just leave it at that, right? Just leave it at that. Now, what you can do then, and this is really important, and a lot of people don't do this because you think about it. We do this with work, with your group that a lot of the groups that you work with. A lot of these successful projects happen because there's this thing called debrief, right? You have a debrief where you talk about how the project went, how the results are, how is each person, and you're not just talking about the results of the project, you're also talking about where each person is feeling and how involved were there any hiccups, were there any complications? And so what you can do is that night you come home, say, hey, how was being on time? Thank you for being on time. How was that for you? And you can have a debrief. Instead of assuming, you spend that energy assuming in your head that it's going to be in their head, and that it's, instead of assuming because it's important to you, it's going to be important to them. Use that energy to verbalize, right? To talk it out. But again, be careful, and that's another time for another topic, because you want to be, you don't want to be patronizing, you don't want to be condemning, you don't want to be accusing, but you want to come, as like two people who just want to make it work, and just want to be on the same page. I've seen this work for a lot of couples. Sometimes couples, when I bring this up with couples, like, hey, have you heard, have you guys ever plan ahead? They're like, no, not really. I mean, she should know, right? Well, let's just assume she doesn't know. Why don't we start with that assumption? Or he doesn't know, because he's lived his whole life doing things differently. But the good thing is he cares. When you guys are on the same page, he or she responds really well to you, right? And like, yeah. And so, talk it out and then have a debrief. And they're like, why? It's so like unromantic. Well, again, it takes work. I'd rather have the romance where you feel safe, that the romance will continue, instead of that romance where it's like a powerful emotional feeling, but you're not sure if it's going to last. But instead, have those romantic feelings with a strong foundation to support the romance, to give not like literal birth to a baby, but sometimes that happens. If you have a little too much to drink, right? Then you do that so that your marriage, your relationship can grow in a lot of ways. And so I share this with you because this is stuff that my wife and I do for each other, right? I mean, there was a point in our marriage that we were fighting over the smallest things. And, there were times that, she took the initiative or I took an initiative. And that's one thing I appreciate about our marriage is that, we have that space where we can be on, where we can not make assumptions. And sometimes we make assumptions, like, what's wrong with you, right? We've had a lot of those arguments. And I'm like sarcastic with her. I'm like, everything's wrong with me because of you, right? And so we'll have those those kind of petty fights. We had a lot of times, we always go back to, okay, maybe we're just making a lot of assumptions, right? And I remember when we had our first child, I was assuming when I'm, we would have kind of a schedule with our oldest. And I assumed that, when it's her turn to take care of the baby, when our firstborn was born 12 years ago, I guess like almost 13 years ago, right? That, I could take a break and go off and play basketball with my friends. And because I had that desire to still play basketball, where I thought I could still play. I think that's the main thing. And so a lot of times I would do that, assuming she was okay with it, assuming because I did that, then, she's okay. But I didn't realize that she felt alone. And I didn't realize that by me just taking off without even communicating and not coming back like a certain hour or a certain time or just going off and eating my friends later on, that she felt like I was abandoning her. Now, is that true? Of course not, right? But I just needed my break. And I assumed she understood that. You know what? We're just not on the same page. And so I think my wife brought it up or I brought it. I can't remember. One of us did. And so we spelled it out like, oh, okay, and it was helpful because all she wanted to know was I was just going to leave her so that if something came up, like she knew she could still call me or she needed something or just like she's always, and she pointed out like, when I'm taking care of the baby on my own, even though she's working, whatever, like she's ready to come home or she's ready to do whatever just to make sure I wasn't alone. And so, and so I think because we talked about that, and that's how I realized, oh, okay, I'm making you feel alone, and I don't want to make you feel that way, especially in our marriage. And in some ways, I was looking at my friends, I'm like, I'm not building a future with them, I'm not creating a new life with them. That sounds kind of weird, but I'm building a new life with my wife. So why, if I right now I have to put more boundaries towards playing basketball with my friends, then I'll do that so my wife feels like she's not alone and that she has a husband that does care about her. And I want her to feel that way. And just like I want her to feel that way with her, that she cares about me, and she does, right? And so those were, some of the times that that was one thing that we started doing that really helped our marriage, that really helped us to get over that hump where we're like fighting over the smallest things. And we do those debriefs, like how was this and how was that? We still do that even now. And I enjoy that because now there's no room for assumptions in our marriage or whenever we do something new. And with the little things, she takes some of the things that I care about. To her, may be little, but she's shown that she cares about it, and she'll do those little things to show that she is trusting over the little things. Just like for me, there's a lot of little things that I'm like, what's the big deal? But of course, on a good day, right? On a good day, then I'll do those things because I know it means a lot to her. And we live in the South Bay, and like everyone else who lives in the Bay Area, no matter what your background is, it's stressful, right? From academia where A+ is average, right, to everyone, their mom who's like, it's crazy. It's like people who are rich have a hard time buying a house. And you're just like, if a rich guy who's got all these PhDs and all these different master's degrees having a hard time buying a house, and they're working like crazy just to make their mortgage payments, like, That's crazy, right? And we live that life. But I'm lucky that I have a marriage where even though life is chaotic, life can be stressful, the stress is not there in our marriage. And if it does show up, if we're not on the same page, we talk about those three things to make our marriage enjoyable and a place where we can be replenished and experience joy and experience life together. And so, and I hope this video is helpful for you. And again, if you need any help, a lot of these things, it's not something that happens overnight. It really helps to have a professional, third party, it sounds kind of funny, right? A professional relationship coach or a professional counselor work with you and to talk about some of these things and not just like problem solve. You need more than problem solve, but you need someone that helps you to focus on the things that makes your relationship go and how to keep it going, but also how to address those wounds that you have and why you're fighting over these little things and how can you problem solve, how can you brainstorm, and how can you be on the same page? Why is it so important to earn that person's trust and the little things that you do? So, reach out to me, love to hear your situation and help you experience the joy and the lightness of being with someone because you're willing to do what it takes to save your relationship.